Nevertheless, since we are conscious, being human, we need to work within these limits until we obtain a level of understanding whereby we can get beyond duality and understand existence in its ultimate form, non-dual. This is the goal of Crowley's system, and since he was exposed to the Golden Dawn framework, he used it when creating his system. When formulating the equation of 0 equals 2, Crowley used the Hermetic Kabbalah's Tree of Life, the diagram that you have in front of you, the Tree of Life diagram to map out the process of consciousness attainment. Within the Golden Dawn, the Kabbalah and the Kabbalistic Tree of Light were of great importance. Each grade or level of advancement was attributed to a Sephiroth or a sphere on the tree. In addition, noted occult author Israel Regardie stated that the Tree of Life has been found to be the most convenient system yet discovered of classifying phenomena in the universe and recording their relations. The Golden Dawn used the Tree of Life to map out its initiatory system. Crowley used the Tree of Life, much like the Golden Dawn did, to map out the stages of one's attainment and to articulate the steps each person would observe when reaching each stage. The tree itself is made of 10 circles or sphere arranged in 3 columns and connected with 22 paths. The top 3 spheres and paths form an upward pointing triangle. The next 2 sets of 3 spheres form 2 downward pointing triangles, and at the bottom center is the 10th sphere. In addition to the paths forming the triangles, there are other paths connecting various spheres together in a system that is mirrored on both sides of the center column. The spheres are numbered 1 through 10, starting at the top center and ending at the bottom center. In addition to the spheres and paths, there are also 3 ovals that surround the tree and are called the veils of existence. This is the diagram and classification system that Crowley used to map out his levels of consciousness. Crowley first placed the 0 of 0 equals 2 at the top of the diagram, represented by the 3rd veil of existence called Ein, to which he states, "I assert the absoluteness of the Kabbalistic 0. Ein means nothing in Hebrew, and is what Crowley equated to sunyata. The other side of the equation is located in Malkuth, the 10th sphere of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, in which conventional dualistic existence operates. The 22 connecting paths represent symbolic gateways or connections. Because of the immense scope of the Kabbalistic Tree of Life, I'm going to concentrate on the center column and in particular focus on the 3 spheres Malkuth, Tiphereth, and Kether. Conceptually, Malkuth is where one operates in a day-to-day sense and thus experiences the illusion of duality. All phenomena appear real and separate. This is also the place where time and space are perceived. To this end, Crowley asserted, time was necessarily created by us in order to make room for the apparent existence of the duality to which we devise. 2 phenomena which occur in time would be considered simultaneous if separated in space, so that our observations of the former were delayed. So as far as we are concerned, i.e. in our sensoria, so that any 2 impressions can only be registered by us as consecutive. Even when we are aware of their simultaneity, we are compelled to place them in sequence. Because of the illusion of duality, our conventional consciousness makes the distinctions between one object or thought versus another in time and space. As such, we constantly differentiate and order our surroundings based on observations of separateness and when we observe phenomena. The result is we invent space, time, sense impressions, etc., to enable us to distinguish between experiences, to express our conception of the multiplicity of the possibilities contained in the idea of 0. Similarly, discussing the illusory principle of the independence of separate phenomena, Garfield points out that the arising and cessation of phenomena appear simultaneous and distinct only because we misunderstand the nature of dependent arising and thus confuse conventional reality to be ultimate reality. However, Crowley states that there are further states of consciousness in which eventually this illusion is eliminated. The next state of consciousness proceeds from an observation of duality to a state of unity or one-pointed consciousness. This state of mind is mapped to the Kabbalistic sphere of Tiphereth. You'll find that in the center of your diagram. In Tiphereth, Crowley notes the vision, or apprehension, a much better word, of the universe is as a single phenomenon, outside all limitations, whether of time, space, causality, or whatnot. It is in this state of consciousness that one obtains knowledge and conversation of the holy guardian angel. Knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel was Crowley's term for uniting the conscious mind with the subconscious, when one achieves one-pointed consciousness and the differentiation between any one thing and any other is removed. This includes the perception of time, space, perceptions of cause and effect, even the distinctions between the conscious and the subconscious mind. In his ceremony to lead the practitioner towards one-pointed consciousness, called Liber, Crowley wrote, "The angel appeareth in Tipra, which is the heart of the Ruach, and thus the center of gravity of the mind. Hence, the angel is the truth, the logos, or articulate expression of the whole being of the adept, so that as he increases in the perfect understanding of his name, he approaches the solution of the ultimate problem, who he himself truly is." The subconscious, Crowley said, was, to all intents and purposes, the Holy Guardian Angel, with whom the aspirant wished to communicate, in order to establish his or her true will. Crowley stated that one obtains one's true will when one becomes fully aware of one's true self and gains complete self-knowledge. This self-knowledge is obtained by withdrawing for a time to a monastic form of self-consciousness, which does not distinguish between the ego and non-ego, in other words, obtaining samadhi. One concludes from this that the universe is identical with the ego, and all things dissolve into a formless essence characterized by knowledge and bliss. But this early stage of samadhi is an illusion. But subsequent samadhis teaches that his universal instantaneous unity exists as none and two, and he learns that his samadhi is particular to himself as well as common to all. When this state of consciousness is reached, barriers between the conscious mind and the subconscious are eliminated, and they interact as one. This is the main task of the practitioner, was to have knowledge and conversation with his holy guardian angel, to become aware of his nature and purpose, fulfilling them. Reaching this point of self-knowledge, i.e., knowing one's true will, was of great significance to Crowley. In fact, it was the centerpiece of his spiritual and philosophical system. Despite the importance of this step in the path of attainment, this state of consciousness is only a step on the path towards deeper states of consciousness, a state in which the true nature of existence is revealed. Crowley places this level of attainment on the Kabbalistic sphere called Kether. You'll see that on the top of your diagram. Kether is where one becomes fully aware of the ultimate nature of truth, what Buddhists often call enlightenment. Crowley called this ultimate state of consciousness or initiation ipsissimus, a combination of the Latin word ipse, meaning self, and the Latin superlative inflection issimus. In regard to this attainment, Crowley writes, "The ipsissimus is wholly free from all limitation soever, existing in the nature of all things without discrimination of quantity or quality between them. He has identified being and not being and becoming, action and non-action, and tendency to action, with all other triplicities, not distinguishing between them in respect to any conditions, or between any one thing and any other thing as to whether or it is with or without conditions. The ipsissimus is preeminently the master of all modes of existence. That is, his being is entirely free from internal or external necessity. His work is to destroy all tendencies to construct or to cancel such necessities. He is the master of the law of unsubstantiality, anatta. The ipsissimus has no relation as such with any being. He has no will in any direction, no consciousness of any kind involving duality. The ipsissimus no longer operates on a day-to-day basis within the illusion of duality. Upon reaching a fundamental understanding of the truth, one continues to operate in a world around us, but sees and understands phenomena in a radically different way. Commenting on this state of consciousness, Crowley describes it as the experience where the universe itself is abolished and not annihilated. He continues, "It is commonplace to say that there are no words to describe this final destruction. Such is the fact, and there is nothing one can do about it but put it down boldly, as I have done above." As can be seen, Crowley obtained much of his ontological understanding from the concepts of Buddhism, translating his ideas of sunyata or emptiness into the Kabbalistic ein or nothing. Crowley adapted the concepts of dependent origination, pratitya tsumutpada, and conventional truth, samvriti satya, and ultimate truth, paramatha satya, into the compact equation 0 = 2. In doing so, he took Eastern ontological concepts and presented them in a Western Kabbalistic framework that can be explored by those with little Eastern understanding. By mapping the various states of consciousness to the spheres of the Kabbalistic tree of life, Crowley presents a system by which a practitioner could systematically work to gain the various forms of consciousness. By transcending dual consciousness and leaving Malkuth, a practitioner can reach one-pointed consciousness and achieve the first major goal of obtaining knowledge and conversation of the Holy Guardian Angel, and gaining one's understanding of one's true will. This stage being mapped to Tipworth. No small task in itself, but once completed, the practitioner would work towards higher states of consciousness, ending in the sphere of Kether, obtaining comprehension of the true nature of the universe. Taken all together, Crowley's system of attainment combined disparate elements of Eastern and Western philosophy and theology into a spiritual philosophy by which practitioners can obtain higher states of consciousness and understanding of themselves and the universe. All right, that's the paper. So, I saw a whole bunch of glazed looks on people's faces, and rightly so. It's oriented towards an academic audience. So let's start going back and looking at the two realities of truth. Okay, so first we start off looking at the core teaching in Buddhism is that the universe itself is empty, sunyata. Okay, what this means is that nothing is intrinsic of itself. You're seeing me standing here and you think I exist, but ultimately I'm not really here. I'm just a combination of a bunch of processes and conditions that have come together at this moment to put this form together. And based on other processes and conditions, this form will change. So as I take breaths, as I learn new things, the John that you see standing here, it will not be the John of tomorrow. And all of us are constantly changing. So this is what dependent origination is. Nothing is intrinsically itself anywhere. And what that means is the differentiation that we make, of the podium here and the speakers there, and it's really just an illusion that our mind has by looking at the things called edges. I stand here because you can tell I'm here, and the curtains are behind me. If you couldn't see anything beyond me, you couldn't see my edges, you couldn't see me. Because I'm only understandable when I'm differentiated from something else. And this is where the two truths is coming together. Ultimately, nothing has any intrinsic separate existence, sunyata or ein, nothingness. But conventionally in the world around us, we see things separate all the time. Each person sitting here in these chairs, or me standing up here, or the food that we're going to enjoy later. It all seems very separate to us, because we make distinctions here and there. And so this cycle of conditions coming together is called pratitya tsumutpada, or dependent origination. Now, what's really difficult to understand about that is when someone says there's no I, and this is a core tenet of Buddhism, which I should note that later Crowley rejected. Crowley does believe that there is ultimately something that is transpersonal, that is reincarnated, whereas Buddhism asserts a no-self, anatta, that it has a tendency to be reborn, but there's no actually self, there's no eternal soul or anything like that is reborn. Buddhism also makes a distinction between reincarnation and rebirth. And within Buddhism, rebirth is this tendency. It's like going from, if you had a row of candles, picking up the first candle and lighting the second candle, blowing out the first one, putting it down, taking the second candle, lighting the third, doing that all the way down to the end. You'd have a whole bunch of candles that were lit and were blown out, and you'd have this final candle burning. That flame seems to have a continuity through all of the candles, but it's not the same flame. And so Buddhism makes that distinction that there is a continuity there, but it's not the same self. Whereas within Crowley's system, there is a reincarnating self. So this is something that Buddhism asserts that ultimately is different from Crowley's ontological understanding. Now, Crowley would still say that self ultimately is nothing, but has a transpersonal reincarnation existence